name is Jackie Riemann Schneider-McCrary. I am a bankruptcy attorney in New Braunfels, Texas. And if you're watching this, you've probably retained me. And the purpose of this video is to explain to you how to complete the bankruptcy packet for either your Chapter 7 or your Chapter 13 bankruptcy. The first page is the instructions, so it's always best to start with the instructions. Number 1 on the instructions is to fill in every blank. And the importance here is that when you're looking at the packet, don't just leave anything empty. If the answer is none, write none. If the answer is not applicable, write not applicable. The difference in that is that, for example, if it asks you how many jet airplanes you have, the answer would probably be none. If it asks you what color are your jet airplanes, then the answer would be not applicable. Number 2 is to complete the packet yourself. The main thing here is that you will have to swear under oath that at the hearing that you provided the information to me to complete your statement of financial affairs and your schedules, and that you are personally familiar with all of the information filed for you in your bankruptcy. So if you do not complete the packet yourself, you at least need to oversee the person completing it for you, because you are going to be responsible for that information being correct. Number 3, you should be consistent in your information that you're providing. For example, if you list your vehicle valued at $10,000 on Schedule D, it also will need to be valued at $10,000 on Schedule B. Number 4 on your list of instructions is to use the fair market value when valuing your property. And what this means, the fair market value is defined as what a willing buyer would pay a willing seller. And you should not consider what you paid for something and it's not replacement value. It's what could you sell it for now and the condition it's in. And an example of this would be, I have an old milk jug that has Texas Tech on it, and one of my favorite clients gave this to me, and I wouldn't sell it for $1 million. However, if someone asked me to assign a fair market value, I would probably be able to find one on eBay and buy one just like it for, maybe 10, 20 bucks. So that would be the fair market value. So the important thing here when you're valuing your property is that you don't consider emotional value. You don't consider what you could get for it if you fixed it up. It's what could you get for it now in the condition it's in now. Number 5 is to write legibly. It's very important that we're able to read what you put in the packet. You probably can't write worse than I do, so it's probably not an issue, but please write legibly. Number 6, do not make your own packet or add charts or pages. Basically, just fill in the blank. The one exception to this is if there are any lawsuits, please attach the lawsuit so we can get the correct information from the lawsuit. Number 7, please be precise and exact. When it comes to debt and income, don't round the number. It needs to be to the penny. If your car payment is $599.27, be sure to list that. Don't list it at $600. And number 8, please call, email, or fax if you have any questions. There's no dumb questions. And number 9, most importantly, when you're ready to turn in the packet, please call or email and make an appointment to turn it in. I will sit down with you and spend at least an hour going over it when you turn it in. So please do not drop it off with the receptionist or shove it under the door. Please make an appointment when you're ready to turn in the packet. And know that the turnaround time for turning in the packet and then to getting your case ready will be about 2 weeks. To begin filling out your packet, the first thing, it's pretty simple, is your name and the name of your spouse if you're married. The main thing here is that if you are married and you put yourself first, that you continue to list yourself first throughout the rest of the packet. So it's sort of set up like debtor and spouse. So it doesn't matter who's first as long as you keep it the same throughout the packet. The next thing, it does require your full name, which does include your middle name written out, and then your basic information, your name, mailing address, and this says county, not country. And then the last number 8 through 10 are in reference to if you're in any pending or prior bankruptcies within the past 8 years. Then we get into the Statement of Financial Affairs section, and there's two main sections in the bankruptcy. One will be the Statement of Financial Affairs, and the other will be the schedules. The Statement of Financial Affairs, the non-business questions, go from numbers 1 through 17, and quite frankly, this looks at your last 2 to 3 years of financial situations, what you've made, what you've done with your money, and it really is looking for fraud. And to make sure that you didn't just sell your Mercedes to your brother for $5 so you don't have to list your Mercedes. And before you've gotten to this, we would have already discussed this situation, so hopefully you don't have any of those issues. But number 1 will be in reference to income that you've received from business or employment. And there is a section again for debtor and spouse, and you should go over the past 3 years. So it should be year to date, what you've made. And if you are employed, you can simply go to your latest pay stub and it should be the gross amount, that's before taxes are taken out, and what you've received year to date. Then the year before and the year before that. This should match up with your W-2s and also your tax return. And the trustee will see your tax return, so these numbers do need to match up. Then there is a place, and I have room for 3 different employers. If you need more, you can write on the back. But then they want to see where you earned the money that you're listing that you've received this year, the year before, and the year before that. And then the same information is required for your spouse. Now, if you earn the money from something other than business or employment, this would be retirement or Social Security, or if somebody just gave you money, and that would be on number 2. So if you've gotten any money out of your 401k, if you received retirement, you put the name and address of the sources that you've received the income, and then again, year to date, last year, and year before. And again, it is separated for debtor and spouse. Number 3, this looks back in the last 90 days and sees what creditors you've been paying on a regular basis. And the main thing here, really, this should just be your secured debt. This should be the things that, if you're looking at a Chapter 7, the house or the car, the items that you're going to be keeping. If you're in a Chapter 13, it may be a little bit different, but basically you just want to see what you've been paying just recently. The main thing there is they want to make sure that you don't have any preferences, you're not preferring one creditor over another. 3B, this is payments to insiders. This would be a friend, family member, business partner that is familiar with your situation that you've paid back recently. So within, and actually within 2 years. So if you have been paying or favoring any friends or relatives, you'd have to list that there. Number 4, this is the exception to attaching documents to the packet. This is lawsuits. If you've been involved in any lawsuits, and that includes criminal and divorce, in the past year, so in the past 12 months before filing, this is where we would list that. If you're unsure, let me know and we will discuss it. 4B, this is where you list any property that's been attached, garnished, or seized in any of those lawsuits. Again, if you're unsure, just let me know and we'll discuss it. Number 5, this is where you would list any property that's been repossessed or foreclosed on in the last 12 months. So if you've had your house foreclosed, or if you've had a vehicle taken back, and it doesn't matter if you returned it willingly or if they repossessed it, you still list it on number 5. Number 6, this involves any property that's been assigned to a creditor. Usually this will be no. And same thing with 6B, if any property has been in the hands of a custodian or a receiver in the year before filing. Again, most of these are usually no. If you're in a lawsuit, you might have these issues, and we can discuss that. Number 7, this refers to any gifts that you've given away in the 12 months before filing. And if you just read the instructions there, if it's 200 to an individual family member, if it's less than 200, you don't need to list it, or if it's over $100 to any churches or charities. It's okay if you do that. We just need to list it, just to show your relationship to the recipient of the gift, the dates of the gift, and describe the value. So if you give property to a church or charity on a regular basis, that's fine, just list that. Number 8 is for losses from theft, casualty, gambling in the past 12 months before filing. The main thing here that you're looking at, if you've had any car accidents, if you've had any hail damage, anything stolen, anything where you've reported it to the authorities, or where you had insurance cover part of it. So that's just show the date of loss and the amount covered by insurance. Number 9, when we talk about that bankruptcy is based on full disclosure of all income, debt, and assets, you also have to disclose what you paid me. It will show as on or before the filing date, because in Chapter 7 it does have to be paid in full before it is filed. So the main thing here is just the amount that you have paid and the filing fee. Number 10, you will list all property that you've transferred in the past 2 years. And the main thing here, like we discussed, that you didn't transfer your Mercedes to your brother for $5, right? So you put the name and address. If you've sold any property, if you sold anything online, if you sold a vehicle, you'll put who you sold it to, their address, and then the relationship to them. So if they are related to you. If it's a stranger, you say you sold your house and you don't know who, they're just a stranger, then you'll put their name and address, and the relationship would be none. You'd have no relationship to them. But you still put the day of the transfer, description of the property sold, and the value. Number 11, this is where you list all the bank accounts that you've closed in the past 12 months. And again, that's fine if you close bank accounts. A lot of times people have bank accounts out there that they don't ever use. So the thing here is that you list the closing balance and what you had in the bank account at the time you closed it. Number 12, this is where you list any safe deposit boxes, if you have any of those, and what is actually in the safe deposit box. Number 13 is where you would list any set-offs, and this is where a bank takes money out of your account to pay themselves. This is probably going to be none on this. Normally this does not occur until after you file bankruptcy. Number 14 is where you list any property that is owned by another person that you have possession or control over. An example of this would be if you co-signed or signed for a minor child or somebody that didn't have as good a credit as you, and they pay for the vehicle, but the vehicle is in your name. This also might be where if you have a company vehicle or a company computer, but it doesn't belong to you, but you have possession of it. Number 15, if you have lived in the same address for 4 years. And if not, then if you would list all your former addresses for the past 4 years. It would also be helpful if you can list if you own the property or if you rent it. Number 16, please list all of your spouses for the past 8 years and where and when you were divorced, or if they died, you could list when and where they actually passed away. If you were divorced within 3 years of filing, I do need a copy of your divorce decree. Number 17 is a silly question about environmental laws. If for some reason you've had some issues with environmental agencies, please let me know. Otherwise, that answer should be none. This is the end of the Statement of Financial Affairs non-business section. If you've owned a business in the past 6 years, whether you operated it or not, if you filed for an LLC, we need to list that business, and you need to complete a different section. And so please let me know if that is the case. currency schedules, which are alphabetical and they go from A to J. The first two sections, A and B, are related to your property. A is for real property, which that would be a house that is on land. Okay. And this is where most people would list their homestead property, and there is room to list if you have a mortgage, if you're paying on your house, then who you're paying, the exact amount owed, and the current fair market value, which you can, if you don't know, you can start with your county appraisal value, which you can find online. Then look at that and see if that is realistic, what you think if you sold your house now in the condition it's in, what you could actually get for it. It just really depends. I know lately for Comal County, the appraisal values have been quite a bit higher than what people could actually sell them for. So it just really depends on your house and your situation where you are. The next question is, do you plan on keeping the property? Yes or no? Your monthly payment. And then if you are in a Chapter 13, this is for you only, if you are behind, we need to know the amount that you are behind. This would be the amount to cure the default in order to bring you current. And then we also need to know how many months you are behind. If you don't know, you need to call your mortgage company and find out. If you have two loans on your house, you need to list both of these here. We need to know an amount for each one and what is owed. If for some reason you have another piece of property besides your homestead property, perhaps you have a burial lot or a rental property, you need to list that information on this page as well. And that's for other real property. Then anything that is not real property is considered personal property, and that will go on Schedule B. And for Schedule B, there are basically categories for each type of property. And the majority of these things you will not have, but the first section, most of these you will. Again, if you have it, then explain it, and you're going to define the property, and you're going to provide the fair market value of the property. And if you happen to owe on the property, you're going to list that too. So for each type of property, you'll see fair market value and amount owed. The first one is cash on hand. This is if you carry cash, how much you have, and it's as of the day of filing. A lot of people don't carry cash anymore, so if you just put $10, $20 in your wallet or in your purse, that's fine. Number two is for bank accounts. And this is every bank account that you have open as of the day of filing needs to be listed. And the bank account starts with your bank name, then it's either, the type is either a checking or savings account, and then the account number. And we will redact that to the last four digits of the account number. And then on the day of filing, you will actually bring in a statement either from your home computer or an ATM or your bank that shows what is in the account, what's available, what the available balance is on that day. So if you want to put something in there now, just your average balance is fine, we'll use that, but when you come in to file, we will actually type in what is in your account on that day. It can't be the day before, it can't be the day after, it has to be the day you filed. Number three, this is security deposits. If you happen to have, if you're renting and you have a security deposit with your landlord, that's where you would put that. Now the fair market value, if you had to pay your last month's rent up front, but you don't get that back, then your fair market value of that would be zero. So even though they may have $1,000, if you can't get the money back, then there is no value in it. The next section is number 4 and 5, and this is the large items in your household and the small items in your household. Number 4 is the large items. And you'll see on your packet that I listed some items there. I've decided that most people have the same type of items in your household. Most people have some TVs, love seats, sofa, tables, chairs, desks, that sort of thing. So basically, just go through your house and look at the big items in the house and count them. So, and you'll just put numbers next to these. How many TVs, how many sofas, how many chairs. And once you get through all of that, you'll come up with one amount, one value if you were going to sell all of that. Some people will put a little amount next to each one and then add them up. That's fine. Some people do it on a separate sheet of paper. Doesn't matter. Main thing here is if you were going to sell all of the large items in your house in a garage sale, what could you get? The other issue on this is if you owe money on something, say you purchase something from Conn's, and you still owe on a computer or something like that, you need to list that separately because there will be an amount owed. On number 5, this is the small items in your household. This would be like the books, decorations. Again, I pretty much decided most people have generally the same items. Everybody has some kitchen appliances, everybody has some electronics, silverware, pots and pans, that sort of thing. So on these items, please don't count the small items, just list that you have them, circle them. If there's anything extra that is not on this list, be sure and add that. If you have any special collections, if you collect any coins or anything like that, be sure and list that. And then again, list the fair market value of all those small items combined. On number 6, this is wearing apparel. Again, nobody's going to come to your house and raid your closet, but as part of the process you do have to list all of your assets, and that includes your clothes. So I've decided that most of everybody's wardrobe can be defined as clothing, shoes, coats, and accessories, and I just assign a value per person, usually about $300, $250 per person. Again, you may have paid $100 for a coat, but once you've worn it and then tried to sell it in a garage sale, you'd be lucky to get $2 or $3 for it. Number 7, this is jewelry and furs. Nobody has furs in Texas, but when it comes to jewelry, this includes watches, even costume jewelry. You don't have to list every pair of costume earrings you have, but at least list costume jewelry. Now you're looking at pawn shop value, which if you're lucky is about maybe 10% of what you paid for it. But again, don't consider emotional value here. Actually think if you were going to sell it, if you're going to list it on eBay, what could you get for it? And you put the amount there. If you have jewelry that, say you purchased from K Jewelers, it's actually secured. So again, if you stop paying on that, they'll take the jewelry away. And so there's an amount owed on that jewelry, and you need to list that separately if that's the case. Page number 8 is firearms and hobby equipment. Everybody in Texas has 2 guns. But here you list your guns, hobby equipment, anything like that. And again, pawn shop value, what you could get if you took it and sold them. Number 9 is your life insurance policies. And when it comes to life insurance policies, there's basically 2 types. One that if you may have a $25,000 policy, but you don't get anything unless you die, then the fair market value is 0. If, however, you have a policy and you can cash it in or get a loan value off of that policy, then it's whatever the cash surrender value is, and that's what you'd list the value over here. So you may have a $25,000 policy, and you would list that over here, $25,000 term life policy, but the fair market value may be 0. If you're unsure, just explain what you have and we'll discuss it. Number 10 is annuities. Most people ask me, what's an annuity? So if you don't know what it is, chances are you don't have one. But if you do have any type of annuities where you're being paid out, please let me know and we'll write that down. Number 11, this is for retirement and IRAs. If you have any type of pension plans, please explain that. Retirements are usually protected. It's just a matter of you just have to list it. Sometimes people have retirements that are not vested. Explain that. If you have like a teacher retirement, they send you something every year that tells you what's in there. That's the amount that you would list, and you explain that it was a teacher retirement. Number 12 is stocks. Number 13 is interest in partnerships or joint ventures. Number 14 is government or corporate bonds. A lot of people do not have any of those items, so you'd be listing none. Number 15 is accounts receivable. This means, for example, you're in a business, sometimes insurance agents have this where they have money coming in and there's an account receivable. You put that amount there. Chances are, if you're not in any business, you don't have accounts receivable. Number 16, this is any alimony or child support that is owed to you or that you are receiving on a regular basis. Number 17 is any other liquidated debts owed to you. So this can be, usually would be IRS tax refunds. If you were expecting a refund and you were filing before you actually received the refund. So you put what you expect to receive. Number 18 refers to future interest in life estates. And if you're unsure if you have a life estate or if you have an interest in that, please let me know and we'll discuss it. Number 19 refers to contingent or non-contingent interest in estates also. And this doesn't mean that you were listed in someone's will. It means that you were actually listed in a will or you're an heir. And the key thing is that they've actually died and you've either you've inherited the property already or you have a right to inherit the property, even though it may not be in your name. Again, if you're unsure, please ask me about that and we'll discuss it. Number 20, this is where you list any contingent or other unliquidated claims. This would be if you could, you tripped and fell in Walmart and you can sue them. Anybody that owes you any money or anybody that you can sue, whether you've gotten the money or not, any claims that you may have against somebody. That's where you would list that. Number 21 is for patents or copyrights. If you have any of those, if you have any interest in any of those, please list that there. Next page is number 22, licenses or franchises. If you have a hunting license, a fishing license, a teaching license or certificate, or even a law license, you can list it. Unfortunately, you can't sell it to somebody else, so there's really not a fair market value, so you could just put a filler amount like $1, but even though they're not a sellable asset, they're still an asset, so we still list it. Number 23, this is where we start vehicles, and there's room for 4 different vehicles, and basically you list any vehicle that you have an ownership interest in, and describe the vehicle, and then if you still owe on the vehicle, then you need to explain who you're paying, the lien holder on the vehicle, how much you still owe, what your monthly payments are, and again, that should be to the penny exact. And then we need to come up with a fair market value of the vehicle in the condition it's in. So you can look online, Red Book, Blue Book, NADA, just what you would get if you were going to sell a vehicle. Stick a yard sign on it. What would you get for the vehicle? And again, there's room for 4 different vehicles. And number 24 then is referring to boats. If you happen to have a boat or Sea-Doo or whatever, any type of watercraft, this is where you would list that. And again, if you owe it on the vehicle, if you owe on the boat, that you would list that, how much you owe, the fair market value, if you were going to sell it, what you could get for it, and again, what your payments are. And you may have thought I was joking, but here's the section number 25 for your airplanes. So if you happen to have an airplane, please list it right there. Number 26 refers to office equipment. So this is for a business. If you have a business and you have office equipment, that's where you would list that. If you have personal office equipment, so you have a desk and a computer, but you use it personally, that would go back on number 4. Number 27, this refers to tools of trade. This would be like your cabinet maker and your cabinet making tools, or your mechanic and you have mechanic tools. Regular tools, personal tools, go back on number 5. Number 28, this is inventory. This would be, for example, again, if you have a business and you have, you sell Mary Kay and you have Mary Kay inventory, that's where you would list that. Number 29 is where you list your pets, your household animals. I know it's hard to assign a value to your dog, but again, we have to assign some type of value. If you were going to sell your dog in the newspaper, what would you get for it? No one's going to take your dog, but we do have to list your dog as an asset. Number 30 deals with any crops. Number 31 dealing with any farming supplies. And 32 any feeds for your cattle. If you happen to have anything else that we don't know where to put it, put that on number 33 and we'll discuss where it goes. The next schedule you will see in your packet is Schedule D. So you'll notice that there is no Schedule C in the packet. The Schedule C is something that I will complete entirely, and it is basically the exemptions, and we will discuss that. The exemptions, part of bankruptcy is putting all of your assets on the table, And the exemptions are the laws that protect your assets, whether we use the Texas or the federal exemptions, or if you're from another state, what other state exemptions that we'll use. But anyway, the point is that you'll see that there is no Schedule C and that you don't need to complete that. The next sections that you'll see are Schedule D, E, and F. And part of bankruptcy is they'll ask you, did you list all of your assets? Did you list all of your debts? Did you list all of your creditors? And that is the D, E, and F is the creditor section. You'll notice, so before you get started listing these, you'll notice that there are 3 different types of creditors when it comes to bankruptcy. First, D is where you list your secured creditors. And a secured creditor means that if you don't pay, they can take something away. There's some collateral involved. The most common example is your house or your car. If you don't pay on it, they can take it away. So it's a secured debt. If you're not sure, we will discuss it and make sure that you know which one you're where you listed. But anyway, when you're filling this out, it's very important that when you're looking at the creditor name and the mailing address, that you get the correct mailing address, because they need to receive the notice of your bankruptcy. And the information that you provide me here will be put into the schedules, and then basically these addresses will be stamped on an envelope. And if they don't get the envelope, they don't get notice of your bankruptcy, then they're not going to know what's going on, and the debt would not be discharged. So very important on all of these sections that you have the correct mailing address. Also, then we have the account number, so they can attach the account to you. It will be redacted to the last 4 digits, but we do need to list the complete account number. And then the collateral is what is securing the debt. So if it is a 2010 red Ford Mustang, that's what you would list. Again, then we have the fair market value, and you should have listed on Schedule B the vehicle also. So if you listed the value at $20,000 there, then it should also be $20,000 here. And then you'll see the full amount still owed for each creditor, again, to the penny how much you still owe. And then for each item, your intentions as to the collateral. Do you intend on keeping or surrendering the collateral? And just circle one of those. And then they also have for each one, if it's married, is it community or separate property? If you're not married, then don't worry about it. Otherwise, you circle which one it is, and if you're not sure, we'll discuss that. Anything that you incurred while you were married, whether it's in your name or not, when it comes to property, because we are a community property state, that is community property. If you inherited it, or if your spouse had the property before you got married, then it would be separate property. And all of the creditors also have a section of if it is disputed, yes or no. And if for some reason you dispute that you owe that amount, please circle yes and explain it. Otherwise, it should be listed as no all the way down. Then on Schedule E, this is where we list priority debts, unsecured priority creditors. This would be, for example, if you owe any child support or alimony, that's a domestic support obligation, or if you owe anything to the IRS, any taxes, this is where you would list that. There's also other things in this list, but the most common ones are taxes, child support, and alimony. Then everything else is considered a general unsecured creditor. And there's several pages. I think each packet has 6 pages of these, so there's room to list 36 creditors. And the key thing here is that everybody that touches your debt or has touched your debt needs to get their own notice that you file bankruptcy. So first, you want to list the original creditor. So if it was a hospital, if it was a credit card, whoever it is that you owe, the original creditor, they go down first. Then they may have sent it to a collection agency or 2 collection agencies. Then you would list each collection agency separately with the collection agency's name and address. Then when it comes to type of debt, so for example, if you listed a credit card, the type of debt would be credit card. Then if it went to Joe Bob's collection agency, then the type of debt would be collection agency. Then occasionally, after it's been with a collection agency, it may then go to a law firm if they're planning on suing you or if they have sued you for that debt. Then you would also list the law firm because they need to get notice of your bankruptcy also. So you may have one debt, but you may have 2 or 3 or more creditors that you list for that one debt. And again, then the type of debt, if it was an attorney, would just be, attorney for creditor. And if you're unsure on a mailing address, if you have 2 mailing addresses, my advice is always to list everything you have. I would rather send out 3 notices and have 2 come back than somebody not get their notice and that debt not get discharged because they didn't get notice of your bankruptcy. So very important that you find and you do the best you can. Use your statement is the best thing. Then use a credit report. You don't have it on a statement, then go to Google. But main thing is you want to have a complete mailing address for every creditor, for every person that you owe money to. This includes even if you owe Uncle Bob, you got to list Uncle Bob, and his mailing address and how much you owe Uncle Bob. Another thing that needs to go on Schedule F, another unsecured creditor that you need to list are student loans. Student loans, even though they're not dischargeable, they still need to be listed. All of your debts, whether they're dischargeable or not, need to be listed somewhere on Schedule D, E, or F. And student loans will go on Schedule F. And that's all for the creditor section. Moving on to Schedule G and H, which I have those on one page. And G is for leases. So if you're leasing or renting anything, then that's where you would list that. So for example, if you are in an apartment and you're in a year lease, then you need to list that. If you're leasing your vehicle, then you need to list that. And also you need to explain if you're going to keep or surrender, which we call assume or reject when it comes to leases. Schedule H is on the same page, and that is where you list co-debtors. So if anybody has co-signed for you, or if you co-sign for anybody else, you need to list the name of the co-debtor, so who are you tied to on the debt, and the full name and mailing address of the creditor. Where this comes into play is usually if you co-sign for an adult child, you still need to list them and whatever you post the address for the creditor. The other thing is sometimes, even though you've gotten divorced, you were co-signed with your ex-spouse on some debt, and you need to list that also. It does not matter what the divorce decree says. It doesn't matter if the divorce decree says that they are supposed to pay it. If you're still listed on the debt and they did not refinance a house or did not refinance a vehicle, then you may still be liable for that debt. So you need to list that. You need to list then your ex, their mailing address, and the debts that you would still be owed on. The last 2 schedules you'll see will be Schedule I and J, and I is for the income and J is for the budget. First on this, you will also list, which is kind of strange, but you also list your marital status and dependents. And when it comes to dependents under the age of 18, please only list their first initial and then their age and relationship. So if they're your son, your daughter, your niece, your nephew, however they're related to you. If you also, on your income taxes, if you also take care of and you have an older parent living with you, be sure and list your parent and their age and then your relationship, your mom, your stepmom. Basically everybody that when you file your income taxes, everybody you list as a dependent in your household needs to be accounted for. Then you'll see the next part refers to your current employment information. So this will be at the time of filing. And we have a place for, again, debtor and spouse and your occupation. And your occupation is basically your job title. And then where you are employed, who you're working for. And then you'll see a section for, basically we're trying to figure out, what you're starting your monthly expenses with. How much do you have to spend? So you start out with your gross wages, and this should be your average monthly wages, and let me know how you're paid, if you're paid weekly, bi-weekly, or semi-monthly. There's actually a difference. Semi-monthly means that you just receive 2 checks per month. Biweekly is every 2 weeks. So basically, let me know how you're paid, and then you'll start with your gross amount of income. And if you receive overtime, and if this is overtime that you receive on a regular basis, then you would list that too. If it's something that you hardly ever get overtime, or you can't depend on it, it's just once in a while, then I wouldn't list it, because you don't want to have to depend on that to spend on in your budget. However, the best thing to do on this, if you're unsure, look at the last 6 months and see how much overtime that you received, and use an average of that. That would be the best thing. Then you have your deductions, and basically just go through your pay stubs and deduct out what is taken out. And again, this should be to the penny. How much for withholding, Medicare, Social Security, and then any health insurance. If it's health savings account, that's a little different than health insurance, so be sure and list that separately. If you have any union dues, if you have retirement, and when it comes to retirement, we do differentiate between voluntary and involuntary retirement. If you work for a private company, then your retirement, even if they match your retirement, is still considered voluntary. However, if you work for a government agency or entity, if you work for a school district, for example, then your retirement is mandatory. You don't have a choice. They're going to take a certain percentage out each pay period. So be sure and indicate whether your retirement is voluntary or mandatory. If you're unsure, we can discuss it. And then if you have any other deductions taken out, be sure to list that. Then if you have any other type of income that's not from employment, for example, business, retirement, disability, Social Security, or if somebody is just giving you money on a regular basis, then that would be listed on the second page of Schedule I. And you add all of this together, they come up to one amount, and this is what you're going to start with for your monthly budget. So when you go to Schedule J, and you'll see that it does show your budget after bankruptcy, which it should be your budget going forward. So for example, when it comes to, if you're in a Chapter 7, you're not going to be listing, for example, credit card payment, because you're going to be, any debt that's going to be discharged should not be part of your budget going forward. And basically this schedule, there's 2 pages of it, and it just has everything that you can spend on in a month. And I would always start with the things that are always the same. So for example, if your rent and your house payment is the same every month to the penny, you list that. If your car payment, that's over here on other personal expenses, is the same every month to the penny, then you list that. If you, your car insurance, your health insurance, life insurance, anything that's not taken out of your paycheck that you pay separately, that's down here at the bottom, so you list that. So if you're always paying, $99.87 for your car insurance, list that. Then go through your utilities, and again, it's your average monthly expenses, so go by what your average utilities are. And some of these may be bundled. If they're bundled, then just draw lines, what your monthly amount is. If you're paying your internet and your cable and your phone together. And then there's a place for cell phone. Probably the things that I would do last would be your home maintenance, food, and clothing. You kind of make a bracket around that. And basically, again, the home maintenance would be anything that you spend on your house, and again, it's average. So, you may not buy, hopefully you don't buy a new AC unit every year, but if you had to buy that within the past year, you divide that out over a 12-month period. Food, toiletries is basically your grocery bill, your Walmart bill, your Walgreens bill, what you spend on average, again, for the month. And then clothing, again, average for the whole family, how much are you spending? There's also a place for medical and dental not covered by insurance. So this would be your co-pays, your prescriptions, Band-Aids, your over-the-counter medicine, anything like that you spend on a regular basis. Then we have gasoline car repairs. That does not include your car payment. Your car payment is separate. It'll be listed over here. Then we have newspapers and recreation, which they don't really like us having that, and it's in Chapter 7, so you'll notice those are X'd out. There is a place for charitable contributions and tithing. This would be amounts to churches and charities on a regular basis. Again, everything needs to match up. So if you did not list this in your tax return, or if you didn't list it back in the schedules and the statement of financial affairs, if you're not doing this on a regular basis, then you shouldn't be listing something here. On the page of Schedule J, you'll see there's a place to list other taxes. This would be, for example, if you're in an IRS tax payment and you're paying them on a regular basis, that's where you put that there. There's also a place for alimony or child support that does not come out of your paycheck. If it already comes out of your paycheck, you wouldn't list it here. This would be like if you pay directly. And this is another section for support of dependents not in the know. So for example, if you have a child in college and they're still your dependents, and so you would list that amount there. Then there's a section for business expenses, and we will go over that. Basically, businesses, that you all have categories of expenses, utilities, rent, cost of goods sold. Every business has its own expenses and its own categories. So basically, whatever you give me, list here, I will use that to make a chart of categories and outline your business expenses. And then the other part, other personal expenses, if there's something else that we didn't list there, mainly this is where you put the vehicle payment. If you have a cross-collateralized credit card payment, which if you're unsure of that, what that means, we will have discussed it. But anything else that you pay on a regular basis that's not listed on page 1 should be listed here. The main thing here is that your monthly income, your total monthly income minus your total monthly expenses, then that leaves you with what your expendable or disposable income is. And depending on whether you're doing a Chapter 7 or 13, we will discuss what that number should be. But that's the whole point of this, is to show what you will have left over, if anything, at the end of the month.